Howdy folks, welcome back to Highland Mountain Bike Park. My name is Kevin, and today we're going to go over our September installment of our progression guide, which will cover drop technique. Right now we're standing up on the reef drop, and we're going to go around the mountain today and cover all the skills that we need to successfully do drops of this size. So follow me, let's go shred some drops. Now that we just saw an example of the reef drop, let's talk about how to successfully do a drop of this size. When thinking about our drop philosophy or technique, I think about speed first. Speed is an important part of the equation for dropping. We want to make sure that we have plenty of momentum to get off a drop. The slower we go at a drop, technically the harder it makes the drop and the more technique we have to use to successfully hit the drop. So first thing to think about is always having plenty of speed and momentum to successfully do a drop, especially one of this size like the reef drop. Let's go a little bit farther down the hill and talk about a few more of the finer details of our drop technique. Now we're down here in our park ready zone to go over the specifics of our drop technique. Just to recap, that speed is our friend for drops. The more speed or momentum we have for a drop, the easier or the less work that we need to do to get our bike to the landing. With speed being our friend, our technique that we're thinking about is the lunge or the push technique. What I think about is pushing or lunging off a drop at the angle of the drop. So behind us in our practice zone, we have nice flat wooden drops. At the second to last wooden board, just before the end, I'm thinking about pushing or lunging my wheel forward at the angle of the drop. What we're doing with drops by pushing forward is we're controlling how our front wheel and rear wheel roll off a drop. If we don't do anything, our front wheel is gonna fall. We're gonna land nose heavy. If we just pull up on a drop, you're gonna land back wheel heavy, like in a wheelie. And if we use that push technique and we do things just right, we're gonna get both wheels to land in the landing at the same time. So now that we know our lunge or push technique, we're gonna go around this nice flat area and feel out that technique before we apply it on our practice drops. To think about this technique, I think about it in 3 stages. As I approach a drop or come onto the wood or rock or whatever the feature is made out of, I'm gonna drop low and get down into my ready position. Then once I'm at the second to last or last board, I'm gonna be lunging or pushing my front wheel out at the angle of the drop. And as I come in to land that drop, naturally my hips are gonna shift back in to the middle of the bike as I land nice and smooth. So I'm gonna go around really quick and do an example of that. So get nice and low and push, low and push. Now, here in the drop zone, I want to start breaking down the different stages of a drop. So back here where I'm standing, this is the approach. This is where I'm going to be already committed to my feature and setting up in a nice straight line for the feature. Now, as I get down here a little bit more towards the wood where the drop starts, this is the entrance or where the feature really starts. This is where I start getting low down into that ready position, a nice classic athletic stance. If I'm really tall going into a drop, it's going to be really hard to push or preload, so it's important that I'm down in that ready stance so I can move from that position. Once I'm in that nice low position, as I start approaching the end of the drop, this is where I'm really initiating that lunge or push technique. So on about the second to last or maybe even third to last board, this is where I'm really initiating that push in that lunge, and I'm accelerating my front wheel out at the angle of the drop. So again, imagining with flat drops as if these wooden boards just kept going into the sunset, we're pushing at that angle. If this was a downhill angle drop, I would be pushing at that downhill angle. Thinking about our drops, I also want to think about our landings. I commonly get the question when we're talking about this push or lunge technique, naturally when we push or lunge the bike, our hips shift back. And people ask me all the time, like, okay, so like I gotta worry about my hips, right? Like I gotta get my hips back into the middle of the bike for landing. Don't worry about it. It happens really naturally. It's a natural flow where when you're low and you push, the hips shift back. and then as you come into land, the body naturally goes back to that home base position for your body position. So when you're working on your landings, just reference when your wheels are landing. If your front wheel is landing first, there's a chance that you're not pushing enough, or your timing is late. So your front wheel has already left the edge of the drop and you're trying to finish your push. That's why you could land front wheel heavy. If you land back wheel heavy, chances are you're either just pulling up on your handlebars and not pushing out at the angle of the drop, or you're doing your technique really hard with the push. If you push hard enough or lunge your bike hard enough, you'll start doing it manual. So you could land back wheel heavy. And if you're landing both wheels at the same time and you feel like you're doing a push technique and not popping, then that's how you know the technique is correct. Just to go over really quick, speed. So if we're going kind of slow at a drop, we could use more technique to get to that landing. We could preload a little bit and kind of wedge and lift our bike up a little bit to get it to the landing. I do want to mention that that is not common. The goal is that we want to rely on that push or lunge, and as we build up in drop size, it's really important that we're not popping or bunny hopping off a drop. If we hop off a drop and we separate from the wood, what happens is we make the drop bigger. That's not really a problem here in this practice drop zone, but as you get up onto the hill and you do the Highland Trails drop, that becomes a problem, because once you separate and you pop off that drop, you've just made that drop bigger, and that landing is going to be a lot harder to hold on to. So the next time you're out on the trails, think about pushing, not popping. Before we head up on the hill and start applying this technique, just remember that this is a great zone to come to practice all these skills and really challenge yourself to master the drop technique before moving on to the hill. As you move up in drop size, like you can see right here, you're gonna have to use more and more technique, more push, more speed, more momentum. And it's really nice to come in here and practice and challenge yourself before you go out. You can challenge yourself on these drops to go slower and use more technique, or go a little bit faster and have to absorb and stay low. So come on in here and try it out before you go out on the hill. Now that we went over our drop technique in the park ready zone, we can start applying it to features on the hill. So behind me is the Thornton's drop, drop on lower threshold. When looking at this drop, it is easy to probably come into it either fast or slow, and it's important to think about our point of commitment for the feature. When we're setting a point of commitment for a feature, we really want to set it well before the feature. You can never set a point of commitment too early. So looking at this feature, like where I'm standing, about 15 feet in front of it is a great spot to be committed to the feature. I use a point of commitment as a tool to make sure I'm gonna do the feature. Once I cross a point of commitment, it is safer to just do the feature than to bail out at the last second and try to stop. So the next time you're out on the trail, try to use a point of commitment to help yourself get off that next drop. Now I want to talk about an acronym that we use that kind of covers a lot of different techniques in dropping. The acronym is called SLAP, stands for speed, lunge, absorb, and preload. And that covers a lot of the different things that we do in dropping. Speed is in reference to momentum is our friend for drops. The more speed we have, at times the easier a drop can be. If we're going fast enough, then we don't have to use extra technique to get to the drop landing. If we didn't have that speed, that's where we would have to use the P, the preload. If we don't have enough speed and we're at the end of a drop and we realize we're not gonna make it, we can preload a little bit into our bike and kind of wedge our bike up and press our bike over to the landing. So we can use that preload when going a little bit slow. Lunge, the L. That's when we're going at our typical speed, you know, trail speed. We're not going too slow, we're not going too fast, and we just do that normal lunge technique and push our bike off the drop at the angle of the drop. And absorb is when we're going really fast and we need to absorb some of our height and distance so that we land in the drop landing. So just to recap, SLAP, speed, lunge, absorb, and preload really helps us utilize different scenarios in drop technique. So think about that the next time you're out on the trails. All right, so we're down here on Lower Cat's Paw looking at the Silver Spoon, the largest wooden feature on Cat's Paw, our blue jump trail. This feature is a little bit technically difficult because of the in-run and the exit. So looking at this in-run, we have two rollers. We've got this big dirt roller, and then we also have a wooden roller at the start to the drop. This is really where we need to have those pumping skills dialed. Going back a few videos to our progression guide on pumping, if we're going over rollers at high speed, we want to be able to not like float off a roller and maintain our ground contact. So it's really important that we're actively pumping to maintain our grip and control coming into this feature. If we can't properly handle these rollers, it's going to be really hard to hit that drop smoothly. Also, with this being a pretty decently sized feature, we're going to want to make sure we have that point of commitment set well before we're going off the end of that wood. So make sure if you're out on the trail looking at a new drop feature, you're really paying attention to what the entrance is doing to make sure that you're set up as best as you can for the feature. So now we're looking at the landing of the Silver Spoon drop and looking at the exit of the feature. Really important when looking at a drop to think about what both the entrance and exit is doing. Coming into this exit, we can see that we have a really big like left exit berm, but just before that, we have to do a little right-hand setup turn to enter that big free ride berm. So I want to think about coming in and landing nice and high on the landing, braking, getting a lot of nice braking done here before I'm on the turn. But most importantly, as soon as I land this drop, I try to get my eyes on the front or the entrance of this berm. If you land this drop and you look at this big white birch tree right here, chances are you're gonna go right at that birch tree. I see it happen a lot. Really common mistake. When we're hitting a drop and we have a key exit to hit, we gotta look where we wanna go. So next time you're hitting the Silver Spoon drop, try to find that berm as soon as you can. One more thing I wanna think about is just one common technique mistake I see on drops, especially once we come out onto the trails and maybe a little bit more nerves are involved. When people get really, really nervous, they kind of ditch their push or their lunge technique. And instead of getting low and then lunging the bike forward, I see people just kind of sit down and back when they get nervous. That typically causes people's butts to go in the rear wheel and people's front wheels to go down and cause them to go over the bars. So next time you're out on the trails, focus on just lunging that bike, not sitting down. Now we're sitting up here on Upper Any Style, looking at one of the biggest drops on the mountain. This one's called Dump Truck. Dump Truck, as well as a drop above this, the Highland Trails drop, are the two biggest drops on the mountain and often the goal of everyone's drop progression. Often get asked, you know, like, what do I gotta do to hit the big drops? And I really want everyone to think about our entire progression guide video series. We started with body position, went into pumping, cornering, jumping, dropping. We've covered it all. And a feature like this is really where like all those skills culminate and you need everything. Coming into this feature, there's an on-off jumping feature that you can't see. You gotta have good jump skills above. Coming out of that, right where the camera sits, there's actually like a bit of a rock roller coming up into the feature. So you gotta have good pumping skills. And then exiting this drop, don't know if you can really tell, but the feature and the trail really turns to the left. So you gotta be turning as you're exiting. If you don't have good cornering skills, or if you don't have good pumping skills, this drop isn't gonna go good. So really make sure that you're building your skills, not just checking off the next big feature that you wanna get done. We're really big on that here at Highland, teaching skills, not features. I'll leave you with this thought too, that as you do a new drop, you're gonna wanna hit that drop and get many repetitions on it before moving to the next drop. If you hit a feature on Cat's Paw for the first time, that doesn't mean come up onto any style and try one of the big drops. Hit that feature on Cat's Paw 10, 20 times. Feel so confident on it that you know you can hit it at many speeds. Thinking about our dropping skills, there's a lot that plays into the picture, and everything we talked about today, from our speed, our lunge, how we absorb, and how we preload, all factor into the different ways we can hit a drop. Similar to jumps, no drop is created equal, so we're often blending our skills and doing slightly different things on different features. I had tons of fun making this video, and I hope everyone out there has learned something from this dropping talk. And I look forward to seeing everyone out here at Highland Mountain shredding it up on the trails. Yo!